Hey guys, welcome back. So now getting into Jonathan Hickman's new run of X-Men, which just feels fresh just saying it out loud. And he's done a pretty brilliant job of just bringing us a new take and all the new concepts we've been taught through House of X and Powers of 10. But there's also a few things within this first issue that put me in the mind of what is to take place in the future within your recent issues of Black Panther. So now let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so at this point in time, just starting off, and just to be clear like what time we're in, with all the X-Men time jumping that we've been doing lately, but here we're pretty much just picking up after the events of House of X. And that's not to say that we don't or we won't get any more time jumping, because we do get a bit of flashbacks within this issue, but it's not like the crazy back and forth like we got before. But when we jump in and we see Storm and Cyclops who are going to the last Orchis base that's on Earth, there's a few things that we find out here. Because with the X-Men going on their different missions and taking down these different locations, each one of these missions has got more and more dangerous, mainly because of the desperation of Orchis, whose organization is being cleaned off the face of the earth. And with their perspective and their belief that what they're doing is actually saving mankind, it has escalated to the point to where they're willing to die to stop the mutants from keeping them from accomplishing their goals. And even though the X-Men don't use lethal force towards them, Orchis is quite the opposite. So if they let their guard down for even a second, it's a wrap. And for Orchis, it's even reached the point to where they place their attacks on the heroes like they don't even plan for themselves to make it out alive. And when the X-Men make their way through here, we see some pretty crazy examples of that. But as Storm and Cyclops make their way through, they eventually notice that these soldiers at Orchis, and at least the remaining ones who are still conscious, they all fall back into one location, which Storm mentions could be only one of two things. With the first being that, okay, either these guys are extremely well trained and they can defend themselves with the worst tactic ever with grouping all up in one spot, or this is a last ditch effort for them to protect something. And that's one of those things where it's like, okay, it's gotta be option B. But as soon as this happens, we also get the arrival of Magneto and his daughter Polaris. And Polaris takes down these guys pretty quick, pulling up the floor, pushing them to the side. But when they shift their attention to what these Orchis troops were protecting, they discover that it's behind a vibranium door, which Cyclops can't break with his concussive force because the vibranium is just constantly absorbing his optic blast. And so now because of this, because it's vibranium, Magneto's like, step to the side, I'll handle this. And Magneto just rips the vibranium door to shreds. And I'm just looking at this like, oh, so you just ripping vibranium apart now. Because if you guys remember, we talked about Magneto versus Black Panther and how at the time Magneto had mentioned that T'Challa's vibranium suit was protecting him from Magneto just tearing him inside out. But now it's like Hickman is making it clear that for whatever reason, Magneto can manipulate vibranium. And at this point after House of X, this could be for a number of reasons. Whether he's been given a new body with some new abilities and more or less an upgrade in ferromagnetism, which means that he'd be able to shift the electrons within the atoms like figure B from whatever state they were previously in with vibranium. Because for magnetism to actually move something, these electrons had to line up in the same direction within their domain. And so now I didn't go to school for magnetics and magnetism, like that's not what my degree is in, but I would love for us to get a much deeper explanation to this. Because when we see it happen, you can tell like Hickman went out of his way to make it clear, to show us as the reader like, okay, this is a thing. But so now on the other side of this door, Dr. Mars and the other employees from Orchis, they take one of those crazy turns which we were talking about earlier, and in their case, they fight the mutants who are the next stage in evolution, and they inject themselves with a serum that converts themselves back to primates, which just goes to show you how bad these guys are fighting the future, with them doing this and going as far to turn themselves into primal animals in order to go after these mutants. And when this happens, once again, Magneto's like, I'll take it from here, and he fights them off so the others can proceed forward. And when the others get in, they find multiple stasis tubes to where all of them hold mutants except for one. And to the one that's not holding a mutant, they come to find out that this one was actually containing a post-human, which really feels like your reference from Children of Tomorrow from the 1610 universe. And when they discover her, it's kind of brushed over here, but I'd have to say I really feel like what Hickman's doing, which could very well connect with the maker and him bringing this over from the 1610 universe, to whom with at that time he was also working with AIM, and as we know, a part of Orchis is comprised of AIM employees. But in addition to this, like we had seen in Powers of 10 in year 1000, it was then that we learned that machines and the Sentinels, that they were just an element to buy time, and that the true purpose of what mankind was doing, it led more towards engineering their own ascension to something greater than what nature had provided with mutants. So I wouldn't be surprised if Hickman had found a way to like tie the two together. But essentially when Magneto comes back, the girl translocates, she gets away, and there's a bit of suspicion with Magneto getting back so quickly, because Cyclops like, dude, you didn't just kill all them guards, did you? but he let them know that they more or less just attacked each other because not long after their bodies went primal, so did their minds. But even though Magneto insists that they go after the post-human girl, Cyclops is then like, no, we got a mission to stick to, and aside from taking down this Orchis base, our main priority is saving these mutants and taking them to Krakoa, which is one of those things that subtly shows us like off the bat that the Quiet Council for the time being is still in full effect. And in addition to that, even though Magneto sits at the table within the autumn portion with the seasons, even though he made the call for them to go after the post-human girl, when Cyclops, who does not sit at the table, told Magneto no, Magneto had to listen because Cyclops is a great captain. And I don't mean just like a great captain, like he holds the title of great captain. And one thing we know about the great captain is like in the field, when they make a call, their call supersedes anyone else in the field, much like we talked about before. And once again, it's not like they can make some crazy call and it's okay, because whatever call they do choose to make, if it were to be a questionable one, then they would have to answer it to the entire council. But when they get back to Krakoa and the different mutants are getting looked after, like when the younger ones, when they see Magneto, like he's the man. And I'm not even gonna front on him, like he deserves every bit of it, because Magneto at his core, right or wrong, villain or hero, he would die for mutant kind. So they need to go ahead and just put him on the Krakoan dollar, like put his face on it, cause he that guy. And just a little bit that we had seen in that field mission had been an example of all of it, when him and Polaris showed up for Storm and Cyclops, and him operating as needed to push the mission forward, and even going further with that, with him not killing the guards when old Magneto would've, and even following the lead of Cyclops, like just showing that he's a changed man, and really just being the hero that he needs to be for the people who need him the most. And in that moment, we get a glimpse of Magneto just owning it. And so when we see Cyclops, who's having this brief discussion with Polaris as he makes his way to go to like a family dinner, to which he does invite her to, but she's like, she has her own things she needs to sort out. But just before he leaves, he tells her like all of this going on with Krakoa, though it may be taking place in the middle of this messed up world, like it's all worth it. Collectively, we're as close as we've ever been, and they're literally living the dream of providing even a piece of that world to where mutants can live peacefully with support and protection from their own kind. And so following Cyclops from here to the Summer House, which is located adjacent to the blue area of the moon, to where living here you have the Summers clan, which is like the whole Summers family with the addition of a few others. And I'll admit, initially I did think that the Summer House was gonna have like your summer portion from the Quiet Council just from the name Summer House and not Summers with an S. And it's likely that this is something that caters back towards your great captains, so we may see the other three, Gorgon, Bishop, and Magic, with something similar, but we'll just have to wait and see. But as far as here, in the Summers house, we have your Summers clan, and the ones that we know that live here are Cyclops, Wolverine, Vulcan, Havoc, Cable, and Rachel. And with that, there are two additional spots that we don't know of just yet, as far as the accommodations and the way that the house is set up, but then again, those may very well just be guest rooms. But the point of the Summer House for the Summers clan, it's primarily for the use of like first response or even first strike, but with how we're introduced to it and actually seeing the inside, it's really for neither or, with the Starjammers being invited to dinner, plus a few others who Vulcan has invited from Krakoa. But one of the main takeaways that we get from this is a conversation between Scott Summers and his father Corsair. And with coming here, Corsair's getting a closer look about much of what he's heard about throughout House of X, because news travels fast, and though he's not really 100% on board with it, some of it does begin to grow on him. And there's other parts that he just can't get over, like Krakoa making plates and then cleaning them with goo, which then converts them to gases. Like, it's crazy. And he does admit, like Corsair admits, like seeing this now in comparison to the world as he knew it, like it's a pretty steep change. But when he expresses to Cyclops that the thing that's mainly bothering him underneath it all is being a human father worried about his mutant children, who are smack dab in the center of all this. But Cyclops assures him that this is nothing new, with the dangers that have been focusing on him and his brothers, that's always been the same. And the only real difference as a family is them not focusing on those dangers, but rather focusing on what they're fighting for and what they're living for. But from here, jumping over to the Orchis Forge, where we see a bit of this conversation between Karima and Director Devo. And there's quite a few things that we can take away from it, because even though on one hand they're kind of basking in the disaster of Orchis' loss of the Mother Mold, while they're also having this funeral for all the casualties of the lives lost with it, which in Karima's perspective, she tells him like it wasn't but a matter of time before this would happen. But the things that are very intriguing about this conversation are, one, after Director Devo expresses the extent of the loss that they've endured, he tells Karima like the mother mold, the fallen soldiers, like all of that pales in comparison to if they had lost her. And it's not even a statement of sentiment, but it's more so because she's an Omega Sentinel. And so now, in addition to Director Devo being here, shortly after the funeral service, he goes to see Dr. Gregor. And though he asked her why didn't she attend the funeral, he picks up the reason why very quickly, with her husband being lost in that attack, and especially with her being very short and crass with him in her response and her tone. But mainly her reason for not attending, it's much deeper than that. And after the loss of her husband, she is mad at Director Devo, she's mad at Orchis, she's mad at everything pretty much. But ever since the incident, she's been given a new motivation to make it so that her husband lives on through her work. And for me, like the craziest part out of this whole issue, it's here where she tells Director Devo that she didn't attend the funeral because her husband, he wasn't there. Like what was left of him wasn't enough to even bury or do whatever they did with those coffins. But after telling him this, in addition, she goes on to let him know that she's figured out a way to bring him back. And with telling him this, she pulls out what appears to be a shard of the M'Kraan crystal. And now seeing this, man, like this is crazy, because like the thing is, we talked about the M'Kraan crystal before, with it being the home of the Phoenix Force, with it housing the White Hot Room, and its origins going back as far as time itself. And if this is truly the case of what it appears to be, then this is going to be huge for like the next 2,000 plus years as far as what's going on, not only with the X-Men, but also with the Intergalactic Empire of Wakanda, which is something we definitely need to get back into, because even thus far on that playlist where we've gone 2,000 years into the future, where we've seen T'Challa return and join the rebellion, but also within that series, we've seen the importance of the M'Kraan crystal and its ability to restore the memories of many people further on in the future, which is pretty insane, especially with 2,000 years in the future, Storm is still around, and now we know why. So definitely sticking around for us getting back into that, because I for one am definitely looking forward to the future for both of these series. And I mean like not too far into the future, because if you go too far, then it ain't looking good for nobody. And I really just mean like the next couple thousand years. I'm just looking forward to that. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again in the next one. All right, later.